Good morning. I'm currently reading a novel by Australian author Chris Hammer. He writes Australian noir, Australian regional stories set within a place, a community, stories about people, place and life, exploring who we are and identity, and usually held together by some form of mystery. This one of his latest, The Tilt, is set in rural Australia down near the Murray River on the New South Wales side, just not far from Echuca. And the main character is Nell Buchanan, a young homicide detective who works in regional New South Wales and is drawn down as part of a team to explore and investigate two skeletons found in a creek bed, and realises they're murders separated by many years. But the stories are tied together through family and people, and anyway, this is her home and her story is connected into it. And as she's exploring, investigating the background story of one of these men, she's given a map to a shack in the midst of the forest around the Murray. This shack was owned by a man who died several years earlier. He'd gone off grid, he'd disappeared around the time of this fellow's murder. Maybe there's some clues in his shack. And so she goes deep into the forest and finds her way. But at the end, walking the last part of the track, she realises that the shack is on an island. When the wet is up, when the creek is up, it's surrounded by water and she can't get across. She's about to turn back when she sees just down a bit this canoe coming around the bend and through the trees. And it stops and beaches near her. And out steps a woman older than Nell, late 60s. Her name is Willow Jones. And she introduces herself and Nell introduces herself. And Willow knows Nell's family and many of the people. She's grown up in this shack. In fact, the man was her father. And so this has been her home, except she's gone off and explored the world and done her thing. Anyway, they get in the canoe and she says, come and have a look at the shack. And they go to the island and get out. She shows Nell around two simple rooms, very rustic, simple furniture. There's a bookshelf with books and art supplies and canvases. She's an artist. There's a solar cell and a battery that gives her a little bit of power for lighting and boiling the kettle. A gas cooker in the corner. And out the back a little garden and a little greenhouse for other plants and vegetables, and a setting where they can sit and look out across the creek and into the forest. And Nell sits and is filled with the peace and the wonder and the beauty of this place. The sounds of birds and wildlife and creatures. And there's something about it that is just beautiful. And then as Willow shares her story of own self-discovery, of going out into the world, rebelling against her father and this simple life, and exploring the world, experiencing life and trying anything and everything. And coming back and going out and coming back. And finally coming back to look after her father in his dying. Of going out again and then returning for good. This is her home. And she's found her place. And she belongs. And as she talks and as Nell looks out, there's a simplicity, there's a contentment, there's a peace about Willow that touches something deep in Nell. The yearning in her own life for identity and meaning and a place to belong. Nell, like all of us, is on this journey of life, discovering who she is, amidst all the expectations and the noises of family and friends and colleagues and a society and the media and all the pressures to become and to be what she might be. She's part of the police force with its politics and its male domination, with its questions and ambition and drive and fighting and struggling and striving. Who is she? Where does she belong? What's life about? And that's part of her journey and a story. And in this encounter with Willow, something touches her. Something draws her and lures her about this simplicity and this beauty and contentment. That is our story. That is the story of each of us. And some people find, like Willow, find that place of contentment home. They return home after the journey outwards and they find that place. But many don't. This week in the stories I've read from the scriptures, we have stories of temptation. The story in the book of origins of the Jewish scriptures, the early writings of being, of origin, and man and woman as they are in this garden, this paradise, told to eat of any of the fruit except for that one tree in the middle, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This symbolic tree with its fruit that's luscious and seductive. And this personification of temptation, the serpent, comes to them and says, why won't you eat that fruit? Look at it. And they eat. And their eyes are open to see what they couldn't see before. Innocence has left them. It's kind of a story of growing up, of leaving adolescence and becoming adult, of time beginning when pain and reality and life begin. And we're drawn into this deeper, darker place of life, with its joy, but also its pain and its struggle. And the garden is no longer the garden of paradise. It's the harsh place of life. And are struggling to understand who we are and where we belong and what life is about. And that's also the story that Matthew tells. Jesus' own story of this awareness, this opening, this becoming. He's baptized in the Jordan by John. And as he comes up, the Spirit descends on him. And his voice says, "You are my Son, with whom I'm pleased, my beloved." That's the story before the story today. After that, he's taken into the wilderness. A wilderness very different from Willow's wilderness in the forest around the Murray. The Judean wilderness of desert. Equally beautiful and wondrous in its own way, with creatures and wildlife, solitude and silence, but the sounds of the world, not the sounds of people and humanity. And as he fasts and prays and contemplates and meditates, perhaps on this sense of identity, who is he? What does it mean to be this child in God? What does it mean to find his being, his sense of who he is in God? What does it mean to trust in this way? When the fasting and the praying are over, this personification of temptation named Satan, the tempting one, comes. And we're given 3 temptations. He's hungry. You're hungry. Turn these stones into bread. If you really are this child of God, if that's who you are, you can do it. Relevant, spectacular. Do something. Do something for yourself. Take control. The second one is taken to the top of a temple and throw yourself down. For surely, if you are who you think you are, God will send angels and save you. Won't let you die or be hurt. The third temptation is to see the kingdoms of the world spread out. If you bow down and worship me, all of these will be yours. You will have power and authority over all these things. People will look up to you. You'll be famous, well known. You'll have power and control. Go for it. And to each of these temptations, Jesus responds with words of his scriptures. Words that come from the time when his people were wandering in that wilderness, led out of Egypt by Moses, wandering in the wilderness on their way to the promised land that we all seek. The pot of gold, perhaps at the end of the rainbow for many, but the promised land we're on the journey towards. And as they grumble and whinge and whine and complain, they're given these words. Humans don't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. The words of creativity and life and beauty and wonder and of identity. Don't put the Lord your God to the test. Trust, have faith, believe. A bit like in the 12-step program, where having recognised we can't save ourselves and do it alone, to trust in the higher power. This power that comes from beyond, this strength of the one beyond everything, presence, beyond everything that comes to us. And the third one, don't bow down and worship these other gods. Gods that can't deliver, but give yourself into this life of the one true God, who is the love and life at the heart of everything. Trust in this one and you will find life. And that's what Jesus does. And this is the beginning for him, this journey of letting go of the seductions and the temptations and the lures of the world around that would push him into belief systems and ideologies, or taking control for himself. I'm reminded of the words of James Finley, a psychotherapist and a student of the great spiritual teacher and guide Thomas Merton. He says, we're afraid to lose the control we think we have over the life we think we're living. We're afraid to lose the control we think we have over the life we think we're living. And in this, Jesus lets go of this temptation to be in control, to be relevant or spectacular, to be powerful, to follow the ways of wealth or fame or whatever it is, power, and to trust in God. To recognize that he is who he is in God. And I guess at the heart of these stories is the story of identity. Who am I? What is my life? What is life about? How can I live more truly, deeply and fully? How can I find that contentment and fulfillment of being home, of being in the place where I belong, of living the life that is the gift to me? That's what Willow had found. That's what Nell was looking for, as we all are. That's what man and woman in the garden were lured away from. And then the journey is backwards to find where home is. This is the way of Jesus, who finds his identity as a child of God. And out of that flows everything else. And he doesn't have to prove himself. He doesn't have to chase the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. He doesn't have to be lured and seduced by the words and seductions of the world around us, seeking to make us into something else. He's free to be who he is, a child of God, loved and loving. How about you and I? Amen.